Morning, everybody. Welcome to Pax Americana. It's Julie Roginsky here with Olga Lautman. Good to see you all. Olga, yet again, well, let's first acknowledge that the Pax Americana is dead. I think we keep calling the show this very quaint name that no longer is applicable because it's over. So it continues to be over. We talked about, I think, from my perspective, it was basically put to death in Davos. But in addition to all of that, I think it's just, the happy days are over for us. What do you think about what's going on? What has been going on since Davos? Whether I'm right, or you think there's still hope that we are going to potentially ever get our standing in the world back after Trump leaves? What do you think?
I think the damage is definitely going to outlast Trump. Sorry. Because if it was Trump alone who was doing this, it would be one thing. But the fact that you have the whole Republican Party pretty much publicly on board. I mean, there have been reported, meetings between Republicans even during Davos and the Munich Security Conference, meeting with their European counterparts. But the fact is, publicly, they have stood with Trump, which shows that this isn't this is a bigger problem than just Trump. And, in 2016, when he came to power, the Europeans and frankly all our allies could have gone over it and, said, you know what, this happened, it happens. They're having far-right pressure also across Europe, and you have the rise of the far-right parties and all these, liberal, undemocratic parties that many of them are financed by Russia that are rising up across Europe for over the past decade. So they could have understood this, and I think they did, because when Biden, came into power and went around building a coalition saying America is back, you saw a lot of our European counterparts pretty much on board and whatnot. But the fact that the American people chose to bring Trump back the second time, and the fact that this time he has directly gone after and taken steps, not just, talked about Europe being useless and his frustration with Europe, but actually taken steps to undermine them and to endanger the continent. This time around, and with the Republican Party pretty much being silent, this time around, it's going to be very, very hard to rebuild that trust. It's only been 1 year, and look how much damage has been done.
Yeah, Olga, you and I were talking about we're going to talk about for the show, and the one thing that we did not talk about offline, which I feel like we should, it occurs to me, is we're on the cusp of going to war right now. And we're on the cusp of going to war right now with, it's crazy, but we're on the cusp of going to war right now with Iran. And despite the fact that it seems like all of Trump's experts, to the extent that he has any experts left around him, including Raising Cane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, are telling him that this is like a fool's errand. And despite the fact that he promised us, I'm old enough to remember having lived through the last war that Israel had with Iran and being in Tel Aviv when those missiles were falling and being told explicitly by the President of the United States that it was over, that we had put away Iran's nuclear, we had obliterated, was the word he used, Iran's nuclear program. Well, it's been less than a year, and apparently people kind of forgot that he said that, because it's time to go back to Iran and obliterate it again. And, again, this is just, it is so reminiscent of the lead up to the Iraq war and all of the blood and the treasure and the standing in the world that cost us. And the fact that Trump effectively is repeating the exact same playbook is amazing to me, not to mention that you have idiots like Mark Wayne Mullen. I don't know if you saw this yesterday on on Caitlin Collins' show.
You literally just read my mind because I
Yeah,
was just literally thinking and trying to remember his name when he said, "Why? What's wrong? A body can be obliterated. We could be obliterated." And I'm like, "What?"
yeah. And he, I mean, this is a United States senator who has to vote on a war powers resolution, which Trump has no intention of actually bringing to the floor, which is also insane. We're about to go to war illegally because we're not actually um, asking Congress to authorize it. But put that aside, and the fact that people just who are senators just have no problem giving away their responsibility to wage war to the White House. But he said something in addition to that. He also said, well, these are bad guys. I mean, this guy's talking about, the Ayatollah Khamenei back in 1979. He started this Iran revolution, and he's the one that decided he wanted to build a nuclear. This is going back to 1979. Okay. He does not know who the leader of Iran is. He's talking about Khamenei, whereas in 1979, it was the Ayatollah Khamenei who died in 1989 when Mark Wayne Mullen was 12 years old. That's how long that guy hasn't been around for. That guy died when I was 15. Mark Wayne Mullen was 12. Neither of us is 12 or 15 anymore. It's been a really long time, and this guy still does not know who he's about to wage war on. I mean, it's like saying, to put in perspective, if you're Russian, well, we got to go after the United States. I mean, Ronald Reagan, their president said to tear down this wall. Okay, that guy hasn't been around since, I'm sorry, George Bush, the first George Bush. That's the first George Bush was in office when the Ayatollah Khamenei died. That's how long ago this was. And Mark Wayne Mullen does not know that.
And not to mention the fact that it was our tinkering in Iran that actually led to where we are today. And the fact that now we are back after, supporting and we had this conversation last week where we're supporting this. The fact that we are supporting, the Shah that literally they plucked out of nowhere. And the whole thing is just so absurd. And the end of the day, like you said, we are about to go to war. The big difference is, here's the big difference between Iraq and Afghanistan is Bush worked off of the emotions of Americans after 9/11. Rightfully, I'm not sure, he should have done something with Afghanistan and going after bin Laden. I'm not so sure it should have been a 20-year attempted occupation and nation building. I mean, personally, I don't agree with that part, but there had to be some kind of a response after 9/11. Iraq, basically was sold to us, with fake evidence that they're days away from, a program of weapons of mass destruction program, which, by the way, made me laugh because Steve Witkoff, like Trump literally threatened to sue anybody who did not say that the program was obliterated in July. And then you have Witkoff coming on last week. We are a week away now, 1 week away from Iran having nuclear missiles. 1 week. I was like, whoa, how do we go from obliterated to now we're 1 week? And let me just finish this point. We, after 9/11, had allies. Bush went around, with his coalition of the willing, which Trump, by the way, spit on and said that, they were in the back, they were irrelevant. Every country that lost their citizens to stand up for America, and the only time that Article 5 has ever been honored. Trump has spit on all of this, on all their graves. over the recent months. And we had a coalition. This time around, we're about to go to war. The Brits said, no, no, you're not using our air bases. You have the Saudis, who, by the way, said the same thing. Like, nope, this is why we're landing our F-22s in Israel for the first time ever, because you have Middle Eastern countries who are saying, no, you can't use our bases. And you have pretty much what country is going to come and fight and die to fight Iran for America right now.
Yes. And just to be clear, Iran is 2 to 3 times the size of Iraq. It is a very complicated country. And we're seeing protests happen in the streets. And again, we're being told that we will be becoming, all but being told that we'll be greeted as liberators. But what I think people need to understand is that Iran is not necessarily run. There's not one centralized, it's not like Saddam Hussein ran Iraq. There's not one centralized power. In fact, it's run by the IRGC. It's run by the Revolutionary Guards. And they're everywhere. And you can take out the Ayatollah, and you could take out the president, and you could take out whoever, but unless the Israelis or we go in and literally kill Revolutionary Guards one by one by one, we are in for a very, very big problem. And these people are not just in Iran. They are the #1 state sponsors of terrorism. They are everywhere. Let's just remember, they blew up a synagogue in Buenos Aires back in the day. They're here in the United States. And it's not that we should be living and cowering and worried about that if there was an actual foreign policy objective here. But let's say that you're successful in doing this. You're replacing them with whom? The Shah again? We're the descendant of the Shah? Like who are we going to bring some sort of flowering democracy to Iran where suddenly they're going to have free and fair elections and it's going to be this, we tried that. We tried that in Iraq. Iraq is basically a failed state right now. Libya is a failed state right now. All of these places, Afghanistan is certainly a failed state right now. Everywhere we go results in a failed state. And I am by no means suggesting that Iran is awful. Iran is one of the worst places on earth. Their government, what they do to their own people, what they do abroad, they definitely pose a threat to Israel. I saw it firsthand. They sponsor Hamas, they sponsor Hezbollah, they sponsor the Houthis. They are a cancer and a malignant cancer.
So does Russia, by the way.
So does Russia. However, the Saudis would love nothing more than for us to take out their enemy, the Iranians, but they're not letting us use their bases to do it because they're not stupid. The UAE has, sometimes they're friends with Iran, sometimes they're not friends with Iran. But look what's about to happen. Syria is a mess. Israel / Palestine is a tinderbox. Libya is a mess. Egypt is always on the cusp. The only reason it hasn't blown up is because they are oppressing the shit out of their own people. Where is this, where are we going here? By the way, if we could take out the Iranians and transition to some flowering democracy, I'm all for it. I'm not suggesting that Iran does not deserve to, the regime there doesn't deserve to be overthrown and has deserved to be overthrown since 1979. I just want to know what the plan is for the day that happens. Or are we going to go in there again, bomb some more, sites again, which we bombed already, and then call it a day and say bye-bye? And then come back again and keep coming back again and keep coming back again? What's going on here?
Um, Someone wrote Iran's building nuclear weapons to genocide Israel. First of all, Iran's been building nuclear weapons for quite some time. Um, there has been more than ample enough of evidence that Russia has been assisting them well over a decade, if not more. I mean, we can go back potentially 2 decades. I know definitely there's been evidence, over the past at least more than a decade. Israel has their own nuclear program, so Israel, can take care of themselves. And bottom line, look, I am not for Iran. I can't stand Iran. Iran was one of the first
Killing people in
countries that came to assistance to Russia and Ukraine, between providing ballistic missiles, between drones. We were tracking shipments of weapons going from Iran to Russia. Um, Iran even sent IRGC commanders to Crimea to help set up the drone production and everything. So trust me, if Iran falls, I'm more than happy. But now, thinking as an American, we will have a lot of casualties, and we need to know exactly what the plan is. And this is the problem, because one, we don't have a reason. At least Bush stood there and sold us a lie. I mean, they hammered that lie for months, like months and months and months at the UN to the American people, via statements, everything. I mean, they really did everything to make sure they had their bases covered with that lie. Trump, over the past week, has shifted that one. Oh, we're going to go help protesters. Okay, so now is the United States in the business of sending military to help protesters? Because if that's the case, there are so many other countries that commit atrocities against their own people. I can think of Russia. I could think of Assad. Assad killed close to 750,000. Imagine the UN stopped counting at 250,000 dead Syrians. And I worked closely with a Syrian organization. They have upwards of between 500 to 750,000 Syrians who were killed by Assad, Hezbollah, IRGC, and Russia, because Russia was operating there for over a decade. So Trump went from the business of we're there for the protesters to now suddenly Witkoff, they have a nuclear weapon in next week. Which, by the way, technically they have the nuclear weapon right this moment, because the interview was a week ago. Trump lied to us, and didn't only lie, he threatened that it was the program was obliterated, and that Iran can't do anything for decades because they obliterated it so good that that's it.
And at the State of the Union, he crowed about how he ended the war between Israel and Iran. Well, first of all, that war began on his watch. Did he end it? I mean, I guess he ended it by in his words, obliterating the Iran nuclear program, so mission accomplished. But did he end it? Because apparently we're going back. And the minute we go back, there's going to be ballistic missiles over Tel Aviv again. I mean, let's be very clear. That's going to continue. And look, and people have gotten pissed off at me on this network. I don't like when people blame Israel for everything, right? You can't. It veers from being critical of Israel into just being like anti-Semitic, when everything in life you could blame on Israel and AIPAC. And this is like, I'm sick of all that shit. So please don't come at me about this. But I will say this. None of this is happening in a vacuum. Benjamin Netanyahu is about to face an election. If his government doesn't collapse sooner, it's going to be later this year. He has to. And he has been running nonstop on the fact that he has the best relationship with the United States anybody can have. Nobody can have the relationship with him that he has with Trump and with Kushner and with Witkoff and with everybody else. And that Trump does everything he wants. And Netanyahu has a pretty good platform to run on, right? Which might get him in again, which is incomprehensible to me, but it's, because everybody in Israel hates him, but he might just get enough of a coalition running on this. I destroyed Hamas. I destroyed Hezbollah. I destroyed Iran. And I got the United States to help me do it. And I have the United States looking the other way while we annex what they refer to as Judea and Samaria. And I got the United States to look the other way as we're about to clean up the rest of Gaza and probably annex that back again. And, for a country that is traumatized by October 7th, because everybody on earth there knows somebody who died. It's a very, very, very small country. It is literally 1 degree of separation there. And that's a really good argument to make, right? Like, I'm the only one that could keep you safe because I got the greatest military power in the world to do my bidding. Whereas Europe lost the American military umbrella, Israel has it. That's a great platform to run on. But understand, if you're Israeli, that's great for you. But what does the United States get out of this? Does the United States say to Bibi, hey, in order to take out the Iranians for you, like maybe you should stop annexing the West Bank? Maybe we should talk about the way you're behaving in Gaza? Like, what's our end of this bargain? And the answer is we don't have one, which begs the question again. The Saudis hate the Iranians. The UAE tolerates them but doesn't want them around. Israel certainly hates them. Trump has a crypto fund. God knows who's putting money in there. We can't know why we're there. We can't know the real reason why we're doing all of this.
Yeah.
And sorry, Moon Energy, I do not have a serious blind spot when it comes to Israel. I have just spent the last 5 minutes criticizing the shit out of Benjamin Netanyahu. I just don't like when everybody blames when there's a snowstorm outside, or if it's raining outside, people automatically say it's Israel's fault. So I don't have a blind spot when it comes to criticizing the state of Israel as it is being run today. I have a big problem with people saying that the state of Israel should not exist. Because at one point, it was a righteous and moral country, much like the United States was. It is just being run by awful people the way the United States is right now. That's the difference. So go ahead, Olga. Continue.
No, and then going back to the threat, before we move on to Europe, going back to the threat, I mean, we saw the optics, coming from the FBI that is supposed to keep the United States safe. You had Patel basically partying and chugging beers, which frankly, I mean, really is a national security threat, because if this is how easy he can get caught up on camera in the moment, can you imagine what every foreign intelligence agency can do with him? I mean, he's an amateur, and anyone who, works for any intelligence or law enforcement agency would not be doing this on government resources and partying like that. But at the same time that he is using our, tax-paying resources, and was caught partying and humiliating the Bureau. At the same time, he has really purged a lot of the experts. And, with an increased threat to the homeland, you have Noam, who literally has everyone running around, asking any brown or black person for their papers. That's, the only thing Department of Homeland Security is dealing with. And then you have the FBI, who is focused, one, on retribution for Trump, and two, covering up the Epstein files, and three, Patel, their leader, running around. And I mean, this is not the only time. You have a whistleblower who said that he's used resources that have slowed down investigations, when they were like imminent threats. And the fact is, who is monitoring any IRGC or their affiliates in the United States should Iran give the signal to set off terrorist attacks? Or is it that Trump wants the terrorist attacks on the, U.S. soil in order to distract? This is my biggest worry right now because you know what? It feels like Trump is acting on a whim and off the cuff, like, yeah, I want to bomb them. And he came off a high with Maduro because he plucked him out of bed. And the thing is that with Venezuela, they left the whole regime in place. I mean, the only thing they
Oh
did
yeah.
was pluck out Maduro, and that's it. They left the whole regime in place. And yes, it's working out for the United States. Now we'll see what happens next year, in 2 years,
You
5
know
years.
why, Olga? I'm sorry, but I think we talked about this before. Maybe we didn't on the show. I think actually it happened while we were on hiatus.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is only what we could piece together because there's this crypto fund that we, of course, know nothing about. But there is a donor whose last name is Singer, who is a massive, massive, massive donor to Trump and Republican causes to the tune of $50 million or more that we could piece together since Trump got into over the last decade, since Trump got into office since Trump ran for president. Singer tried to make a play for Citgo, which is the Venezuelan American subsidiary that owns the refineries in the Gulf, here in the Gulf of Mexico. I refuse to refer to it as the Gulf of America, in the Gulf of Mexico. No. And there was a court case, and they wanted to seize it so Singer could get it. And Maduro said no. And the reality is that this went to court, and it became a huge court situation. And an American court ruled on behalf of Singer. And Maduro was going to appeal it. The Venezuelan regime was going to appeal it to to federal appeals court. And that is when we went in to get Maduro. And now Delcy Rodriguez is like, we're not going to appeal anything. Take it. We just rewarded. We spent a lot of, by going in there and getting rid of Maduro, just saved a lot of time and legal fees for Singer. Again, I just want to be clear that this is being done to reward these billionaire kleptocrats who are close to Trump and who give money to, as far as we know, to the RNC and to Trump's super PAC. We don't know what they're putting in Trump's pocket personally. We don't know if they're buying crypto tokens. We don't know what they're doing. And so, the grip that we know where Bezos was stupid was giving Melania this $40 million publicly. All he needed to do was buy the Melania meme coin or whatever the hell that thing is called, the token. Nobody would have known about it. So again, all of these decisions are being made with our taxpayer dollars and with our lives. And for what? And when I was watching the State of the Union and you had that man walk in who could barely walk, who was I believe he was the pilot that almost died, going into Venezuela and extracting Maduro, going into Caracas. And this poor guy walks out. He's, as Trump said, there's blood going down the aisles. I don't know if he was obsessed with blood going down the aisles, but this guy almost, apparently, according to Trump himself, almost died, and walks in and gets the Congressional Medal of Honor, or he gets a Purple Heart or whatever he got. And that was very nice. But all I could think when I looked at him was, for what? For what? So Singer could get richer? Because the people of Venezuela are not better off. In fact, the dissidents, Rodriguez cracked down on the dissidents even more because now there was no penalty to doing it. It was done with the whole seal of approval of the United States. It's not like if you're living in Venezuela, happy days are here again.
No. No.
And that's the part that I think is so upsetting to me, is that this man was lionized at the State of the Union, but to what end? To what end? I understand why the 100-year-old man who was, I don't know if you watched the State of the Union, Olga, why this man who was a World War II veteran, why he was lionized. That guy got rid of fascism in Europe and basically saved the world. But, and I'm not diminishing this man, this guy's bravery or the work that he did or the amount of lives that he apparently saved. This is not about him. the question is, when he is sitting there in rehab, learning to walk again, is he sitting there wondering, what the hell am I doing this for? So that singer can get a piece of Cigo?
And that's the thing, that's something we will not know. And with Trump, there is so much corruption that is, intertwined with our national security, with our military. I mean, we, run the best military in the world. It's not mercenaries for sale to whoever puts money into Trump's wallet or his kid's wallet or Witkoff's wallet. And it seems that everywhere where we are, and decisions that we are making are tied specifically to who is investing personally to Trump. And the fact is that again, if Trump wants to go to war with Iran, you know and made the case to the American people, got congressional authorization, explained what in the world, why are we doing this, like a real actual explanation. What is the plan? What are we doing? Are we doing regime change? Are we, leaving the IRGC? Like, what are we doing? Then at least it's something that you can contemplate. But I mean, he throws these things out and he potentially can get a lot of Americans killed. And not just Americans, a lot of, people in the region, because Iran is not Iraq, Iran is not Afghanistan. They have no problem sinking ships. They have Russia and China as an ally. Russia obviously is laughable as an ally these days because, they sign defense agreements with everyone. But these days they haven't been able to honor any of these defense agreements, not in Venezuela, not what's happening with Cuba right now. Or Iran, but they will still assist in one way or another. And I mean, there is nothing more than Russia wants, and China for that matter, is to have us bogged down in Iran, depleting our, stockpile, weapons stockpiles. Which, by the way, I saw an interesting report that China, should Trump go, will use this as a means, monitor it and use it as a potentially to invade Taiwan, because they're also counting on the fact that, America's stockpiles will be depleted, which is also one of the things besides casualties that the generals are raising to Trump, that we don't know if we have enough weapons to fight this war for how long, because no one knows the objective. So this is, going back to this, the fact is we don't know what is happening. It is absolutely shameful that I have to check, OSINT accounts in Israel and Israeli news to even find out, like, is it starting tonight? Because they're the ones getting the information, not American news.
Yeah.
And, the whole thing is just shameful. And I mean, and potentially dangerous to us here in the United States, to our military, and we don't know why, and we don't know who's profiting off of this. We don't know, anything. We have no answers, period. And Trump, even if Democrats take back Congress, this fall, Trump is purposefully flooding the zone with so much corruption, so much lawlessness, that it's like, where do you begin to investigate? Like, what exactly do you investigate? What do you highlight?
Yeah, and American media, to your point of having to check Israeli OSINT accounts and Israeli media, American media has really fallen down on this in insane ways. I mean, for the last 2 weeks, if you turn on CNN, they have had the A block, the B block, sometimes the E block. So they started the show and they end the show with Savannah Guthrie's mother. And look, what happened to Savannah Guthrie's mother is obviously a horrible tragedy. However, it impacts Savannah Guthrie and her family. We're about to go to war again. And nobody's asking the hard questions. I so happened to be at NBC News yesterday. And Tom Yamas, who's the anchor there. I'm talking to him because I was doing the show with him. And again, leading the whole thing on Savannah Guthrie's mother. And I'm like, I get that this is your colleague, and I appreciate entirely that you're all devastated. They really are a family over there. Like, even sitting in the green room, they do the show out of the Today Show studios. So I'm talking to the producers, and I'm talking to the people who mic you up, all the PAs, and then I spoke to him because he's the anchor there, and they're all beyond devastated. I get that this is personal for them. However, it is not about you, friends. It is about what's going on in the world, and what's going on in the world is that we're about to go to war, and everybody's sitting there fixated on Savannah Guthrie's mother. And this is not to diminish. I don't want people to misunderstand me. This is not to diminish the tragedy, what happened to her. I would say this if this were, God forbid, a member of my family. Like, this is not what people should be focused on. We are about to go to war. Nobody's asking you the questions as to what the objective is, what happens, why we're doing it, how we're doing it, how long we're going to be doing it for. Is it to destroy a nuclear program that's been obliterated? Is it to have regime change? Is it to bring a flourishing democracy to the Middle East? Are we doing this in conjunction with our colleagues and our allies in Saudi Arabia that gave Jared Kushner $2 billion? The UAE, which gave Jared Kushner $500 million, is it to do it with Israelis, who Jared Kushner has been, family friends with Benjamin Netanyahu, going back to when Bibi was out of power. He used to come to the United States, and I know this because I know the Kushners. He used to come to the United States and stay at their house. Like, that's how long this relationship goes back. What is the goal here? What is the goal here? Because if I were to get off the show right now and walk to the supermarket, my goal would be to buy A, B, C, D groceries. I know what my goal is. How do I know what that goal is? And yet we don't know, the American people, what the goal is. And by the way, is Congress asking questions? Is Manu Raju at CNN, is he on the Hill every day saying to Markwayne Mullin, hey, Senator, do you feel like before we go in there, do you feel like you should vote on an authorization bill?
Or know who the leader is of the country?
Like, hey, John Thune, is there a war powers resolution that you're putting forward? Like, what the hell is going on? Why are we not focused on this? But we're not. Oh. We're not.
Nope. No, and this again is not happening in a vacuum. This is happening at the same time that Trump has betrayed our European allies, our poor Pax Americana that no longer exist, which is what we started with, and the fact you are seeing it, because now for the most part it's basically all of Europe saying, they're looking the other way. They want nothing to do with Iran. They did finally, which is appalling that it took them so long. They finally did sanction the IRGC. So that's a good thing. But other than that, they don't want nothing to do with this. They don't want to help us. They're not going, if American military members die, not their problem. And this time Trump is literally going in pretty much alone with Israel, and that's it basically.
Yeah.
And even that alignment is not understood. I mean, again, we had Netanyahu here last week. Israeli news knew why he was here, and that he was trying to sell the, Iran war, make the final preparations and whatnot. Why is it American media is not digging into this? And it's like, because last week we had the same conversation, and the only reasonable explanation that so far I have seen is, Israel wants us to go take out Iran, and we said, okay. That's the only reasonable explanation. Why? Because we haven't been given anything else. And in the meantime, we literally have betrayed all our allies. Things are heating up in Europe, across the whole continent, with Russia. Ukraine, I mean, it's abysmal. U.S., betrayed Ukraine, and then pretty much we've got just, marked a 4-year of since the full-scale invasion. And look how far, we are 4 years after the full-scale invasion. And mind you, we've been, Russia invaded 12 years ago. But just over the past year, look how far we are. I mean, we watch scene after scene, night after night after night, city after city, where Russia is hitting Ukrainians, burying them under the rubble, leaving them to, you know, be frozen to death, basically, with no heat, no power, nothing. And then the report comes out that basically the Trump was complaining, and threatened Ukraine because they hit a refinery, I believe, inside of Russia that affected American interest. I mean, are you kidding me? This is, like, they don't even bother hiding it. It's like, we don't care about genocide. We don't care about what's happening. Russia is doing across all of Ukraine. You hit something that financially, is messing with our pockets. I don't even know what financial interest, frankly. Um, but this is a complaint coming from the United States. I mean, the whole thing is shameful. This is where the United States
Yeah,
is.
and look, if we get bogged down in Iran, which sounds like we might, or unless this is just another exercise to go bomb, what are we doing here? Like, again, if we're going to go bomb the rest of these nuclear sites, which we already told were bombed to oblivion, okay, great. Then we'll be back again in a few months. So this is just going to keep going and going and going, because what Trump says he wants to hear from the Iranians, this is the most laughable part, is he wants to hear they're never going to create a nuclear weapon. Iran has said this all along. They continue to lie. So if that's all it takes for Trump to stand down, Iran's going to say to him whatever the hell he wants to hear, and then he can go ahead and say he ended another war, which is entirely of his own making. But as we're getting bogged down in Iran, Ukraine is having the worst winter of the last 4 years. This war is now going on longer, almost, than World War II. China is preparing itself in Asia. And the United States, the world's policeman, now a lot of people don't want us to be the world's policeman, but the United States is going to be bogged down again in the Middle East. None of this is a coincidence.
And just to add, North Korea, Kim Jong-un popped out, as Trump is saying, under no circumstances Iran can have a nuclear weapon. He popped out and said, "Oh, we're only increasing our nuclear program." And that's it. Like, we're growing our nuclear program. Yeah. So here you have North Korea, and then on top of it, they're bragging, that they could take South Korea out in a minute. So here you have, like, what are we policing again? Yeah. So North Korea can have nuclear weapons. Iran cannot have nuclear weapons. Iran cannot murder tens of thousands of protesters, but, Syria could have murdered, hundreds of thousands of people and disappeared people and mass graves that are still being dug up today. Russia can, kill opposition leaders and take out their opposition, jail opposition. Go after protesters. Lukashenko clearly is in Trump's, good graces. He's a very cool dictator. He's amazing. He can also go and jail opposition and jail protesters and throw grenades at protesters and, kill protesters. That's fine. And Orban, of course, that Marco Rubio shamefully on the behalf of Americans went and stood there and said, we like this dictator, the same Rubio who just a few years ago was warning about the threat of democracy sliding in Hungary. Suddenly now is, Orban is good, democracy is wonderful there, and whatnot. So exactly, again, what is our policy? Is it whoever pays the most? And it is shameful because America has really look, Trump is almost 80. I mean, the guy's going to die eventually. But the stain that he has left on this country, the fact that, we basically are transactional. And if it was just one administration, again, it could be worked out in the coming years or even decade. But this is the whole Republican Party standing like penguins and backing him up and, clapping and everything. And he is absolutely obliterating that. He is doing that there's no argument, obliterating what America stands for, American values, America's image, because we don't even have a normal foreign policy except pay Trump in order to get what you want.
And they know better. The part that pisses me off is that they know better. I will say this. I worked in the Senate in the lead up to the Iraq War. And I can tell you that there were people who made decisions there because they truly believed the intelligence that they were being given. Because you have people like Colin Powell telling them that this was the case. You have people like Condoleezza Rice, who people respected, irrespective of the fact that she was a Republican. There were a lot of Democrats who respected it. And Bush had credibility in the wake of 9/11, right? Nobody was like, there were plenty of people who voted against the war because they thought of, for the same reason that we oppose this, which is like, what's the end game? What are we doing? But, and what the hell does Iraq have to do with 9/11? Nothing. Nobody ever produced that evidence. But the people who did vote for it, I think, voted for it in good faith for the most part. Here, it's even worse. Because I'm not going to put Markway Mullen as a complete and utter doorknob in this category, but Lindsey Graham, who's never met a war he didn't love, he knows better. John Thune knows better. The chairs of the ranking, of the respective intelligence committees know better. And yet they're going along because they're so deeply terrified of crossing Donald Trump. I mean, this is like for the last 10 years, the only analogy that I can make is that Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale, the emperor has no clothes, where all the courtiers knew that he was naked, but everybody was afraid to say something until some little kid was like, wait a second, that guy's naked. And it's that fairy tale. I mean, you want to understand Washington, D.C., go look up the Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale. It's about 3 pages long. It's going to take you 2 seconds to read. Because that's all this is. This is people knowing better, but are too afraid to say anything. And I remember being in London in the lead up to the war, and people who are British on this chat can tell me, because I'm sure you remember this too. There were massive, like 100,000 people gathered, from Parliament Square up the mall to, up Whitehall to Trafalgar Square and on, protesting the coming war. And you had Tony Blair, was dubbed Bush's poodle, going along with it because, for the same reason that Bibi Netanyahu loves, to go along with Trump because it kind of elevated his own standing. And he's gone down in history as a disgrace as a result. Bush has gone down in history as a disgrace as a result. Every one of these senators and members of Congress who know better, they will go down. Some of them twice, because some of them voted for the Iraq War the first time and are coming back for round 2.
And my biggest thing is, how are they going to explain this if there are casualties, depending on what the objectives are? If there are Americans who will be dying, like, what is the explanation? Well, you're going to have to explain why Americans are dying. I would think maybe they'll gaslight us and say nothing is happening. I don't know. But I mean, this clearly, obviously, the Pentagon is thinking about this, that this will result in American casualties. We are about to send people off to war. They're sitting there pretty much, waiting for the go-ahead, and they might not come home. And, we need to know, again, why and what will happen. What will Republicans do? From giving this much power to Trump, and then that results in Americans dying. And again, 9/11, it was easier because of what happened in the United States. I mean, everyone was, living on emotion. I remember 9/11, like that's one of those moments you remember where you were that day, what you did that day, the weeks after. And it affected the whole country. Not just New York, not just Pennsylvania, not just DC, but it affected the whole country. So it was at least there when we went to Afghanistan. And again, I do not agree with, let's go to Afghanistan and spend 20 years here, 20 plus years, really to go back to square one. Because, I mean, we literally, again, thanks to Trump, left it back to where we went in before we went in September 2001. You have the Taliban back in power. You have women again, bearing the worst atrocities. Like nothing has changed. It's like somebody paused time or rewound time right back to, prior to us spending 20 plus years and trillions and trillions.
Well, I'll tell you this, Olga. I had a conversation with a then recently retired admiral, whose name I'm not going to mention because I want to protect his privacy. But this was in, I'll tell you exactly when this was. This was in 2010, 2011, about halfway through the Afghanistan war. And I said to him, do you think, ultimately, what do you think is going to happen in Afghanistan? And he said something to me that I've never forgotten. And this should apply to the Russians in Ukraine also. This should apply to, this really should apply to us everywhere we go. He said, they know one thing, the Taliban, and they were on the run back then. They know that eventually we will be gone and they will still be there. I mean, this is somebody who was was an admiral during the invasion in 2000, I guess 2002 is when we actually went into Afghanistan. But this is somebody who knew, who's very high ranking in the military. They knew, our own military guys knew that this was a no-win situation. But they felt compelled at least to do it because we had to, punish them for what they did to us on 9/11. Fine. What are we going into Iran for? Were we punishing them for all the terrorism they've committed since 1979? I mean, if that's the case, just tell us. Tell us this is a revenge scheme. It's not though. It's not though. This is happening because somebody put money into Trump's crypto fund. And if I'm wrong, we'll never know because Trump has compromised himself so much that that's where everybody's brain automatically goes.
And just to remind everyone, we have the best military, the most lethal, the most disciplined military in the world, and when they are given objectives, they can complete them. I mean, we've seen them complete them. They complete them. They're very, on point. They're not thinking the politics of it, nothing. They just know my objective is to go and remove this person or do something, and that's it, and it's done. And then the problem is the politics of it, because Afghanistan would have been successful when they were given their initial objectives, but then when the politics gets into nation building and then changes with every administration, and like with the Taliban, the Iranians are the same. I mean, they understand, and pretty much everyone in the world, China is the same, and frankly, every, authoritarian regime, they understand our politics. They understand that every 4 years we're changing someone, potentially 4, sometimes 8 years. That Congress is constantly shifting. That's the beauty of a democracy, but at the same time, they also, can calculate and wait out the long game because they understand, Trump, we just need to wait out X amount of time and that's it. And then Trump will be out of here. I mean, eventually he will be out of here, or he'll be weakened. He'll be very weakened. I mean, you see him, frankly, he is definitely one of those, that you look at of what not to do for aspiring dictators because he wants to be a dictator so bad. He's trying so damn hard on every front, whether it's domestically or abroad, but he just can't get it done. And he just, keeps failing at it. Not to say that, there's not a lot of damage and that, we're going to America will change as a result, is changing. There are a lot of people hurting. We might see even, a lot more. But I am more confident, than going into this that, we are not going to become a Russia full-fledged authoritarian state. I do think that the people will take the country back, eventually.
I don't know. Do you think that? Because
yeah.
I will tell you, if this SAVE Act passes, and this applies to foreign policy as much as just anything else, it will be very, very hard going forward.
I do believe it. Because one, yes, with the SAVE Act, we're just going to have to work harder. We're going to have to make sure that, we help people get their IDs together and do everything. Just like people organize to drive, people to the polling places, help them and make sure that they're registered to vote. We're going to have to work harder. There is more of us. I'm not so sure, though, that it will pass because this is going to affect just as many Republicans as Democrats, because you do have, there's a lot of people who do not have their citizenship, records in order. Some people are very meticulous. They have their birth certificate, they have their passports, everything. Other people, you go into smaller towns, they potentially don't have a birth certificate. They don't know where, a passport. They don't know, where their birth certificate is.
Very expensive. Very expensive to get a passport. And this administration just cut a whole bunch of places where you can get a passport. They're making it very hard for people to get a passport. Very expensive and very hard, and takes a long time.
So it's running actually good, because I got a passport just literally for my son, and I have to say it took 3 weeks, and I didn't expedite anything. It ran like clockwork.
But you paid a lot of money for it, money that a lot of people can't afford.
Oh sure. Yeah, I paid $150 for it. I agree.
That's a lot
but this is something we're going to have to organize. If this is the hurdle, I can promise, there are enough wealthy people who care about democracy in this country who can help, set up NGOs to help people and put that $150. I'll take someone and put $150 for them to get their paperwork. If we all adopt one person who doesn't have that money, we can make it work. There are ways to do it. It's the will. And hopefully we'll see where the SAVE Act goes. But I do have faith in the American people, and particularly, like I said, the point where it got solidified for me was when you had these domestic lawless thugs kill 2 Americans in Minneapolis. And instead of people scurrying away and saying, no, not my problem, you had the opposite reaction where more people came out and said, not on our watch are you going to be murdering Americans or dragging people out of their houses or, whatnot. And you see Minneapolis was a good test case for this. And we have a lot of cities across the country, where people will stand up. So I do believe that, we will find a solution. We just need to keep, nothing will be easy. They'll throw every roadblock that there is at us. But if people are engaged, I think that we will, make it. And if the SAVE Act passes, then we're really just going to have to organize. And just like we organized to drive people to the polls, like I volunteered, last election in 24 to go to Pennsylvania, where there isn't, New York, you can hop on any bus, train to get to a polling station, or any place that needs me where I can drive people. We're going to have to do the same thing to help people get their birth certificates or whatever, passports, whatever it is that they need in order to register. We'll see, though. We will see if it goes, because for some reason it doesn't seem to be going through Senate, but that's your
Well, that's
But
Mitch McConnell, actually. Well, you want to know who's stopping it, is blocking it.
you know this stuff better than me. The
Yeah. Let me just
politics.
tell you guys, because this is important. Mitch McConnell is blocking it because Mitch McConnell smartly understands that if this goes through and Democrats ever get control back, that they will, if you're going to start nationalizing elections now, Democrats have some ideas for how to nationalize elections too. That's one. Two, if they make it harder for seniors to vote by getting rid of mail-in ballots and so on, that doesn't necessarily, just impact Democrats. So McConnell understands the game here. He's now the chair of the Rules Committee in the Senate, so he's preventing this from going through as a rule. So let's hope that he sticks to his guns. But more troublingly to me is, of course, what they're trying to do is put a poll tax on people, because if it's $150 to get your son a passport, it's $150 that a lot of people don't have, which they will be required to vote or go find their birth certificates. Look, I don't have a birth certificate. I was born in Moscow. Where's my birth certificate?
If I showed you mine, it's on parchment paper deteriorating. But I do have a passport, so that's a good thing.
I do too. But my point is, if I ever located my birth certificate, it'd be in Russian. So good luck. But more relevantly, mercifully, I did not change my last name when I got married. But if my last name were different because I changed it, it wouldn't have matched my birth certificate, even if I were born here. All I'd have is, all of these documentations take a lot of time to track down for a lot of people. And if you don't have the money for a passport, which a lot of people don't, nor should they, right? Traveling abroad.
Well, you need a birth certificate anyway, for a passport. So, regardless, we are going to have to help people organize to get birth certificates, And frankly, if the U.S. does this, I don't understand. Then do a, nationwide on the government voting ID, and that's it. I don't know. This is not my area. I do what the rules are in New York. You register to vote with your DMV, and that's it. But if ID is mandatory, I would think the government should provide everyone voting ID, and not a few months before election.
Well, they're not going to do this. They're just.
This is like the real ID, although the real ID isn't that good. Doesn't that qualify? Because that's like how many millions? Like 40 million.
No, it doesn't qualify. Real ID doesn't prove that you're a citizen.
But you have to give your passport or birth certificate. When I got my real ID, I had to bring my license, my passport, and my birth certificate.
Maybe, but the point is they're not counting that as an ID. And by the way, that's just for people who drive. And it's all of this is.
Bottom line, we'll have to organize, hopefully it's not going to happen this year, because you cannot. If you roll something out like this, even if they pass the SAVE Act and say it gets rolled out, you cannot, say, okay, everyone who's married needs to go within the next 3 months and hunt down their birth certificate.
I would say that do it now. Do it now.
Yeah.
Do it now, because if they pass this as McConnell bends, Susan Collins has said that she's voting for it, which is on the one hand shocking, on the other hand not. She's in a tough race. So this, this is. And by the way, John Fetterman said he's voting for this. So it's not even that. Yeah. Okay. Friend, we have been at this a long time. For those of you that I blocked for saying that Zionists are racists or terrorists, I should say, stop it. Stop it. All Zionism is the right of Jews to live in Israel. Just stop it. So I'm sorry if I blocked you. I will unblock you for the next time, but try to maybe understand that this is not, you're veering into a place here that is just unacceptable, in my view. Just don't, okay? Because if you think that Palestinians have the right to live where they live, and they do, then you should also understand that Jews have the right to live where they live also. Okay, on that note, it is great to see everybody. And we will see you all next week. And I know we kept promising for months and months and months to do the American Rewatch Party. It is happening. Olga will be there also. We are recording it this weekend. We will put it up at some point next week. So for all of you, go watch The Americans. The first episode, we will talk about it. It's not just about watching the Americans to talk about the Americans. It's also to talk about the Cold War and what was going on at the time. Olga and I were both little Soviet children living in the United States during the time the Americans took place. So trust us, we remember. And on that
And
note,
the illegals is one of my favorite
the illegal,
like most fascinating KGB programs that ever existed, because it really is like
and Olga and I both know quite a bit about it. So it's not just watching the show, it's also talking to people who are kind of experts in this whole situation. And Olga has some, am I right, Olga, that you have some contacts with people who might have been involved in the legals program who now have come to the sight of light and right?
Well, I mean, for starters, Kalugin was one of the people who oversaw the program at one point,
and you know him,
and he was head of counterintelligence for KGB, specifically that department. But the illegals, we'll get into it, because I personally think that it was also interesting that potentially could have been an influence operation on the U.S. I finally sat down to watch it few years ago to detach from my work. What better way than to go into Russian spy land? And I was like, something didn't add up, and I decided to look, and I was like, interesting. Anyway, interesting show. We'll get into it.
Yeah, we'll get all into it. So please start watching The Americans. At least watch episode 1. I think you could pretty much download it. I don't know if you could download it for free anywhere. We'd have to look, but I know you can download it on Amazon and potentially Hulu. I don't know where it's on. Okay. On that note, Olga and I will be back next week for another episode of Pax Americana. And thank you to everybody who's watching, and we'll see you all soon. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye. Bye.